Welcome in. My name's Jason Priester, Clemson Insider. Hope everybody is having a spectacular Monday. Appreciate everybody that's tuned in. Football is on a break for spring break. Basketball gearing up for March Madness. Baseball still cooking. Yeah, I know their win streak was snapped yesterday, but only 2 losses so far this season. Not too shabby. So I'm gonna term that as still cooking. Before we jump into this thing, want to thank our sponsors over at A-Glass. 2 locations, one in Florence, one in Sumter. All your auto glass needs, replacement, repair, they got you covered. Get yourself a free quote today, myaglass.com. Appreciate those fellas over there. Not the result most were looking for there in Charlotte in the ACC tournament. And I am of the opinion that the Dylan Hunter injury is a big one. I know he doesn't light up the scoreboard night after night. I think he's averaging 4 point something points a game. To me, his loss is more about the way the offense is kind of run when he's on the floor. This team's been at its best since he was inserted into the starting lineup after the triple overtime loss to Georgia Tech. They have not lost a game in which he has started this year. When he's running the floor, it allows older brother Chase to do other things, focus more on his scoring and doing what he does, and he doesn't have to worry about being the floor general. Same thing with Jaden Zachary. I mean, and Hunter's probably your second best defender. With him out, you're going to have guys like Jake Heidbreder and Chauncey Wiggins step up. Dale Jones too. They need more from Dale Jones than what they got. against Louisville the other night. He turned it over 3 times in 11 minutes. And I'm, sitting right there behind the bench, I can tell you, Coach Brownell was not happy. Probably the guy they really need to step up is Wiggins. He's got all the physical traits. He's got all those attributes. He's just not yet put it all together, man. He's just been so inconsistent. And if they're going to make a run in this tournament, they're going to have to overcome the loss of Dylan somehow. Fortunately, Brownell's got a couple of days to work on it and get it figured out. But another thing is they're going to have to shoot the ball better, man. They have not shot well the past, 3 games, I think it is. Their 3-point percentage is way down over that stretch. They started to hit some late in that game against Louisville when they started to make that comeback. But, outside of that, they've been abysmal from deep in the past 3 games. And we're talking about a team that's shot the ball pretty well from 3-point land all season long. It presents for a unique kind of challenge for this team as they, try and, duplicate the run they made last year, making that run to the Elite Eight. It's going to be interesting to see how they decide to overcome that. To me, again, it's not so much what he brings from what Dylan brings from a scoring standpoint. It's just, he's played over 600 minutes this year and he's turned it over 14 times. That's some kind of dependability. And again, I think he's probably the second best defender behind Zachary. And if Clemson runs across a team with really good guard play, multiple athletic guards that can shoot the ball from outside and are really good at driving and creating, they might run into some problems without Dylan on the floor. But it's going to be interesting to see how he handles that. What a weird final night it was there in Charlotte for Clemson, man. You're locked out of your locker room. Never heard of that before. Never heard of it. Can't wrap my head around how that even happens. You've got, a employee of the stadium or the arena, which is, you got security outside of that door since 10 a.m., left twice for breaks and was relieved both times. But somehow the door gets locked, and Clemson spends about 4 or 5 minutes waiting on somebody to come unlock it. They do a lot of their halftime prep there sitting in the hall. That is absolutely unacceptable, man. If it was Duke, if it was North Carolina, the ACC would have issued a public formal apology before the game ended. You've yet to get that. You're not going to get it because you're Clemson. Brad Brownell said he got a phone call from Commissioner Phillips. That's not the same as issuing a public apology. It's just not. And the worst part is nobody can provide any insight or explanation as to why it happened. Did it cost them the game? No. Make no mistake. Let's get that out of the way right here. It didn't cost them a game. Some piss poor officiating probably played a part in costing them the game because it was brutal in that second half, man. Just absolutely brutal. I want to say there were 10 fouls called total in the first half. And, golly, there were well over double that in the second half. Well over double. Louisville shot 10 more free throws despite the fact they took 20-something less 2-point shots. Make that make sense. And then that final sequence where, it was I think 3 players actually fouled Hunter on that drive, man, and no whistle. When the whole second half you've been calling fouls, especially on the Clemson end, every time they blow on somebody, and all of a sudden that's a no call. Again, if that's a Duke or if that's a North Carolina, they're getting that call every single time. Every single time. Baseball saw their long winning streak snapped yesterday at the hands of Notre Dame. Starting to look like you might have some Sunday starter problems. LeGuernick looked like he was, he had the bad start there in Arlington. Then he put 2 back-to-back pretty good starts together, one being in Columbia against South Carolina. Now he's had, 2 or 3 in a row. I think it's 2 in a row now. Yeah, 2 in a row now where he's just not been very good. Particularly with his command. It's one thing to give up a couple of long balls, man, in the first inning, but when you give up a couple of long balls and walk 3 guys, that you just can't have that, man. And to me, the Sunday spot is so critical because oftentimes, and Clemson's not found themselves in this position yet, since Arlington. But oftentimes, what happens on Sunday decides who's going to win the series. That's why Aiden Canuck was so crucial last year, man. And he was so good on Sunday. You knew if the series was tied 1-1, headed into Sunday, you like Clemson's chances with that guy on the mound. Right now, LeGwernick hasn't shown you a whole lot to be confident in. It'll be interesting to see how long his leash is from here out if he doesn't start putting more consistent performances together, because I think they've got some other options they could go to if they needed to. Heck, you could go with B.J. Bailey. I mean, he's shown he's shown it all season, man, but he's gone, several innings in his last 2 appearances, and he's been really good. So he'd be one guy right off the top of my head. But there are some options if you needed to make a move there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if LeGwernick's still the Sunday guy this weekend with Wake Forest running into town, and let's say he's not very good for a 3rd week in a row. What Eric Backett and Jimmy Bellinger decide to do there. Not a whole lot of football to discuss with the team being on spring break. If you got something specific you want to talk about, drop it in the comments and we shall touch on it. $14 SEC teams. Yeah. And supposedly South Carolina got invited to the NIT, having won 2 SEC games all season. That is a travesty. That is a downright travesty, man. Anybody that watched this show knows that I've said many times that I thought the SEC is a little bit overrated. Not saying it's not good, because it is. I mean, it's good. It's deep. There are a lot of really good basketball teams in that league. I just don't think they're head and shoulders above everybody else the way they're portrayed to be. We'll find out for sure over the next couple of weeks. Routinely, the SEC hasn't done so well in the NCAA tournament. We'll see if that changes this year. I kind of think it will, because I think there are a handful of really good teams. I just don't think they're as good top to bottom as they're made out to be. I don't think the 14th team is – I don't know that Texas deserved to get in. I don't think they deserve to be in any more than North Carolina did. You got teams like Ohio State, Indiana, West Virginia probably deserve to get in more than those guys. And, you saw how much brand plays a part in these things sometimes, man. And, he comes out today that Bubba Cunningham, the AD at North Carolina, he actually gets a bonus for the team making the field. He gets a bonus, extra 1 month salary. There's my dog. She wants to make an appearance finally. But we're going to find out about the SEC over the coming weeks and exactly who is good and who's not, and exactly how deep that league really is. Because I think a lot of the narratives were based off what happened in the ACC SEC challenge. And, that's a very small sample size, not to mention the fact you had a couple ACC teams missing some key guys. I just don't know that you want to base a narrative of a whole season on a handful of games played over 2 days in December. But we'll see. 14 is an awful lot, though. Yeah, I took a little bit longer to get it rolling today. I was trying to do something for we went live, and it took me a minute longer than I thought it was going to. I usually try to do it. I usually try to do the intro for about 2 minutes and then jump on. I think it went closer to 4 today. So my bad. Yeah, I agree, man. I think the Dylan Hunter thing is, I think he's a bigger loss than some people realize. You know, I kind of, and I understand it because you look at the stats and he's averaging 4.5 points a game or whatever it is. And you're like, oh man, that's not that big a deal. But when you really dive down into it and see all the other things he does that don't always show up in the box score, those are that's where he's going to be missed, man. To me, it's his defense and him running the floor. You know, running the floor doesn't show up in the box score. Again, 14 turnovers in 600 and something minutes played this year. That's eye popping. And he's got, I think it was 56, 58 assists. That's a heck of a turnover to assist ratio, assist to turnover ratio, however you want to say it. You know, it's a devastating loss. I mean, you just, no matter what, you know, a guy like Hydebreeder, a guy like Dale Jones, they're not going to give you what Hunter gives you on the defensive end. Neither one of those guys, well, I'll take that back. Hydebreeder's not able, he's not going to run the floor from the point. Dale Jones can do some of that, but I don't know if you want to rely on a freshman to that, especially one that has, as much as he's flashed at times this year, and I think he's got a really bright future ahead, I don't know that he's to the point yet where Brad fully trusts him to do those things. You know, he's had a short leash the last couple of games. He's made some mental mistakes. Again, he turned it over 3 times in 11 minutes the other night. You know, and Brownell's always like to rely more heavily on his experienced guys, but it's a big loss, man. It is a big loss. And if they run into a team that gets, you know, really, really good guard play, it's going to be a tough matchup. I haven't really done a deep dive into McNeese yet. So I'm not real sure exactly how good their guards are. But if they, I do know they played Alabama tough. I think it was Ole Miss they played tough. It was 2 SEC teams they played tough, you know, earlier in the year. But McNeese has got the same exact record as Clemson. They're 27-6. They're 58th in the net, 59th in KenPom, 63rd in offense efficiency, 66th in defense efficiency, 259th in defensive rebounding. This is where the defense comes into play. You know, even without Dylan, this is still a pretty good defensive squad. They're better with Dylan. Don't get me wrong, but they're still pretty good without him. And if you can force them into missing some shots, you gotta crash the boards and get those rebounds. They're 77th in 3-point percentage. They shoot 36% from 3. Distribution of, I don't even know what that means, but so they're not sound like they're a big 3-point shooting team, and they don't have a lot of height. So, you know, this is a matchup, especially when it comes to the size. Clemson have a size advantage. Just realized McNeese has a guy averaging 45% all season on 3 from listening to Morgan Thomas. You know, if it's one guy that's doing all your scoring, I like Clemson's chances. You know, in years past, one guy would go off and beat them. That's kind of not been the case this year. You know, there's been times where they've kind of had one guy go off and they're say, hey, more power to you, but nobody else is. You're not going to beat us by yourself, and we're not going to let anybody else beat us. And it's worked well so far. If they've got one good guard that can shoot it from deep, I like my chances with Jaden Zachary on that guy. I think him not being ACC Defensive Player of the Year was one of the biggest snubs of the entire college basketball season. That guy earned that. and that award should have went to him. But he's about as good as it gets defensively for a guard. If he can get his shot start falling again, if they can hit some shots from the perimeter, I really like their chances. Of all the 5 seeds, they're the biggest favorite. They were 7, or last time I looked anyways, they were 7.5-point favorites, and none of the other 5 seeds were favored by that many. But I still think, even without Dillon, I think, and having not done a deep dive on McNeese, just looking at a few of the stats, this is a game Clemson should win. I think they've got enough defensively to kind of slow down one guy from 3-point land, and they've got the size. The key will be keeping Victor Locken out of foul trouble. He's already missing Dylan Hunter. You can't have him get in early foul trouble and miss chunks of the first half. That has been a recipe for disaster this season. And if it happens in the tournament, or if it happens this weekend, Clemson's likely looking at an early exit. Chase has to play entire games like he did after he decided he couldn't worry about having 3 fouls anymore. Yeah, he plays a lot of minutes anyway. So, I wouldn't worry too much about any extra minutes Chase is going to play. To me, that's not really one of the bigger issues. To me, it's more about him having to go back to running the floor instead of, focusing more on scoring. He's got to worry about distribution and, calling the plays or, whatever, being the point guard, being the floor general. And I think we've seen this season, man, he's excelled in the role that he's played, especially, once Dillon took over at point guard. But I think it's a good sign that you got to hope it's a good sign anyways, that he's finally started getting some shots to fall late Friday night, because this team's been abysmal from 3-point land the past 3 games. They got to get some of those to start falling for sure. I still say Brownell's not going to IU. I don't think he is. So I still say that, yeah. Got to be offered the job first anyways. I wish they would not ask Wiggins to dribble the ball anywhere near the paint. Just be a BJ Hall, camp out around the perimeter and shoot the open 3. I wish Chauncey would be a little bit more aggressive. I think there's a fine line here. I wouldn't say I don't want him to dribble at all, but I think sometimes he dribbles a little too much. I am one of those people that would like to see him be more aggressive and not hang around on the perimeter all the time, because he's got the length that he can create some mismatch problems, down in the paint. But he's got to take advantage of that skill set, and he's got to have that aggressive mentality. A lot of times, to me anyways, it seems like when he misses an early shot, especially an early 3-pointer, it takes him out of his game, and everything else suffers because of it. I think he missed one early Friday night, and then they ended up drawing something up for him where he got an easy basket, but it still didn't help, man. He still didn't play well, but I do think it has been important for him to get a basket or 2 early. But I'm kind of halfway here. I'm kind of halfway with you here. I'm not saying I don't want to see him dribble at all, but I do think he dribbles too much sometimes. And once he starts dribbling a little too much, then he's putting the ball in jeopardy, and it's leading to some turnovers. Teams are averaging only 64 points against me. Yeah, they're pretty good defensively too, but I think that's a style that kind of favors Clemson. Again, they've got the size advantage. I still think Jaden Zachary is going to be the best defender on the floor. And Chase Hunter might be the best scorer on the floor. If he could get that flip switch to the level that we saw him at in the tournament last year, I think Clemson wins this game by double digits. Now, if they still struggle to shoot the ball, and it gets into a slugfest, that's the style that favors Clemson, I think, since they have a significant size advantage. Even though you can throw Christian Reeves in there some, if you want to let him get in there and bang around a little bit with those smaller guys. But yeah, McNeese has been pretty good defensively this year, though. There's your number. The Tigers are shooting 25% from deep the last 5 games. It might be worse than that the last 3. Might be worse than that because I think they hit 4 of 10. Maybe was it 4? I know they were 3 of 20 one night, and I think they hit 4 of 10 in one of those games. But take that one where they hit 4 of 10 out, and the numbers are even worse looking. They definitely got to shoot better if they want to have any shot at making it out of this weekend. And if they play to their capabilities, I kind of like the draw. I think they can get out of the weekend. I think they can beat Purdue or even High Point if High Point upsets Purdue. But got to get through McNeese first. Has McNeese State played anyone that we played? Hold on a minute and I'll tell you. I don't think so. I know they played 2 SEC teams, and they played them both tough in the non-conference. But I don't think they played anybody that Clemson played this year. They lost to Alabama in Tuscaloosa 72-64. They lost to Liberty in the non-conference 62-58. They lost to Mississippi State 66-63. So, no, they've not played anybody that Clemson's played this year because they went into conference play after that. And obviously, they're really no match for the rest of the teams in their conference. I think we meet our match in the Sweet 16 with Houston. But that being said, I still think we have the potential of an Elite 8 Final 4 type run. Yeah, Houston will be a tough out. But all things considered, I think if this team makes it to the Sweet 16, that's got to be considered a success, especially with losing Hunter. But Houston would definitely be a tough matchup, man. I was of the opinion Clemson had earned a 4 seed. I knew they weren't going to get it, but I am of the opinion that they earned a 4 seed. Kind of like Louisville definitely did not earn that 8 seed, man. They should have been a 5 at worst. They've got as big a gripe as anybody about where they're seated. But Houston will definitely be a tough out. Wiggins has no moves to drive the lane in his ball handling this for. His best talent is the open. No, you don't want him doing a lot of driving. Again, I think he starts dribbling too much, but I do think you can use him in the post. He doesn't have to always drive the lane. I think you can use him down low in the paint to post up. But no, you don't want to see him do a lot of driving. That's when he starts dribbling the ball too much. And yes, like I said earlier, it leads to turnovers. There's a stat that the lineup with Dylan Hunter in it is the most efficient 5-man lineup in the country. It at least was the most efficient lineup in the country for a while. Yeah, I don't know what stat that is, but I do know that with Dylan in the starting lineup, they were far more efficient offensively than they were without him. I mean, it's like a night and day difference. And we kind of saw that against Louisville, man. They really struggled, not just shooting the ball. It was a struggle offensively. There was not a lot of rhythm. not a lot of flow. It just kind of looked like they were lost at times. And that can happen when you don't have your floor general out there, man. That's why I think it's such a big loss. Think we can make a run if we can get the shots to fall. That's going to be a big part of it. They've got to shoot better than they shot, in the first 37 minutes of the Louisville game. They've got to shoot it better than they did against SMU. They've got to shoot it better than they did in the regular season finale against Virginia Tech. Again, I think they were 4 of 20 from three-point land that night or something like that. It was abysmal. Brownell actually talked a little bit about it last night after the seedings were announced. Basketball is a weird game. Sometimes the shots fall, sometimes they don't. This team was on pace to be one of his best three-point shooting teams of all time, or in not all time, in his career as a head coach, should I say. In his earlier years, they weren't as reliant on the three-pointers as they are now, but there's shooters on this team, man, and you got to let the shooters shoot and hope they shoot themselves out of it. Bring a locksmith with them to the game. Yeah, that might be something they need to look into next time they're playing in Charlotte or Greensboro in the ACC tournament. Offense clicks best in the half court with both Locken and Dillon on the floor. Other player combos, it just doesn't flow as smoothly when Dillon's not out there. Same with Locken too. You lose so much when he's not out there. I think Christian Reeves, I think there's a lot to work with there, but he's not nearly there yet. So he's not a guy you can really heavily lean on in these types of situations as you go into the tournament. That's why it's so imperative that he's the big man stays out of foul trouble. He's got to stay out of foul trouble. Dylan, Hunter, Hurts, not sure Wiggins is the answer. Put 10 out there and play with 3 guards. Yeah, he's tried to put 10 out there, and he keeps, like I said, he had 3 turnovers in 11 minutes against Louisville, man, and he took 2 shots. One of them was a very poor shot. It was not a smart shot, and Brownell was not happy with it. He was not happy with at least one of the turnovers. But I mean, it kind of is what it is at this point. I just don't think he's fully earned the trust yet, and that's why you've seen a little bit more of Heidbreeder. But Heidbreeder's a guy. He said it himself after the game Friday night. Man, he's got to be better. They brought him in here to be kind of that 3-point specialist, man, and he's not shot the ball very well of late. About the only time one goes in for him is if there's a foul called, and as soon as he's shooting it, foul called down low or something, he about guarantee it's going in then. But any other time, it's going to clank off the rim. He's a guy they need to get it going. Best case scenario would be for Dale Jones to get it going. To me, that would be best case scenario. He can run the floor for you some. He's not what you would call a ball hog or anything like that. He's got no problem passing it off and distributing it to his teammates, and that's what you need in this motion offense that Brownell likes to run. He's just got to make better decisions with the ball in his hand. Heard Kerry Adams will be on campus. Yeah, I don't know much about him. What are our chances with him or Samari Matthews? I know we have 2 cornerbacks for the 26 class. How many? They'll take at least one more. There's no way they're telling Samari Matthews no, so they'll take at least one more. Where they stand with him right now, it's kind of hard to say, man. I would definitely not call him the favorite at this point, and I probably would have 6 months ago. But as we all know with recruiting, man, it is a marathon, not a sprint. Still a long ways to go with him. You're going to get him back on campus one more time. You've had Clemson that people thought were leading for Matthews at one point. South Carolina's thought to be a leader at one point. We'll see what happens with him. But, yeah, I don't know about a lot about the other guy. I'd have to look into him, see what I can find out. But they'd definitely take one more for sure. Clemson and FSU need to get used to bad treatment from the conference, officiating, fans, etc. Good news to me is it'll make departure even easier and feel better. I'm not a big conspiracy guy, man, but as you're sitting there watching that thing unfold Friday night after the locker room stuff, and you start to wonder, especially the way that game was officiated. It was TV Teddy, though, and Clemson's had some issues with games of theirs he's officiated in the past, so that was nothing new, man. But the way that game was called in the first half as opposed to the second half, it was just such a night and day difference that it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. We were kind of joking, somebody just got the phone call because it changed on a dime, and it just felt like, every time Clemson blew on a guy, man, they were getting whistled. And when Chase Hunter picks up 3 fouls and that kind of times, man, he picked them up the other night, man, something just doesn't feel right. But I'm not a big conspiracy guy, but it does make you wonder. Just glad our guys fought back and didn't give up. Definitely got the short end of the stick with the officiating as well. Yeah, that game could have easily gone off the rails, about midway through the second half. Once they got down double digits and couldn't quite get it back within single digits, man. And then once they got down 15, it could have gotten ugly. And I think I think what happened over the final 3 minutes says a lot about this team. It says a lot about the veteran leadership they have. I could hear Brownell telling them in the huddles, man, that, there's still a long ways to go. There's still a long ways to go. It's not, I can't remember exactly how he's saying it, but he's basically telling them there was still a lot of basketball to be played. And, they ended up proving that there was and came back. What was it? I think they came back. I think it was 11-point deficit with 2 minutes to go. And they came up one shot short, and they should have been on the line, free throw line, shooting 2 with a chance to tie it there at the end. But we all know how that came out. Thought West Virginia lost over half of their last 20 games. Not exactly turning material. They've got far more quad wins than North Carolina does, though. I'm just kind of comparing them to North Carolina. And there's a lawmaker or two up there, or somebody up there in West Virginia has filed lawsuit against the NCAA over getting left out. It's kind of one of the more silly things you'll hear. Let's see. I got that right here, too. West Virginia politicians plan to announce action against the NCAA and Tournament Selection Committee later on Monday, tied to West Virginia snub. Worth noting there that now Governor Patrick Morrisey was the attorney general in the state who successfully challenged the NCAA transfer rules. So we got a new type of lawsuit. We're suing over getting left out of the tournament. football, you're going to have to be a little more specific, since there's no practice really going on right now. If you want to add something specific, by all means, but there's not really a whole lot new to talk about with football at this point. When does football recruiting open up again? It's open now. Clemson's just on spring break. They're having guys, into spring practice pretty much on a daily basis on the days they practice anyways. So it's open now. I'm harping on asking Wiggins to do different because, Brownell is working on the how to overcome Dylan's injury right now. He needs for this tournament to turn Chauncey and Jake into plus players when on the court. Minimize the ways they turn over the ball. Right now, the offense literally stops when Chauncey holds on to the ball. Yeah, I think we probably agree on this more than I'm making out. I'm just saying I don't think Chauncey's got to be a perimeter player only. I definitely don't want to see him doing a lot of driving to the basket. I don't want to see him dribbling a whole bunch. One or two, make your move to if you're posting up. If you got to dribble it once or twice, make your move and do it. But once you more than that, that's too much for him. Looks like Gill and Bell are back soon. Can't believe some are panic. Hey, man, people are gonna panic after every loss, man. It's the nature of the beast. But I'm in wait and see mode on Gillen and Bell. Bakich has always played injuries very close to the best. 2 weeks ago, he said soon for those guys. It might have been 3 weeks ago now. So it does sound like Bell's getting close, but he was a little bit more vague when it came to Gillen. So I don't know. I'm not sure I would term the word I would use with him is soon. Maybe for Bell, it sounds like maybe 2 weeks minimum for Bell. And if it's 2 weeks for him and Gillen's a little bit behind, I'm thinking a month. Recruiting's open, man. You're gonna have a bunch of players visiting once you've already had a bunch visit through the first couple of weeks of spring practice. There'll be a bunch visited over the back half. There's several guys I think coming on March 29th. If I'm remembering the day right, I can't remember which players. I want to say one of them was a 4-star linebacker, another's an in-state linebacker. I think both those guys are coming on the 29th. Another 2027 linebacker from North Carolina just visited last week, Elijah Chafin. You'll probably start hearing more about him picking up Power 5 offers after he makes the camp circuit this summer. But yeah, they've had a bunch of guys in on unofficial visits this month. Yeah, Bubba Cunningham was on the selection committee. He's actually the chair of the committee. But, I mean, that's nothing new. ADs sit on those committees. Graham Nev's been on one in the past, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe not Graham, but golly, the guy before him that's down in Miami down there now, I forget off the top of my head. Dan Radakovich. I think he sat on one of the committees one time that Clemson was involved in. So, that's not really nothing new. But the fact that he got a bonus for North Carolina just making the field, but man, that's it's got more to do with brand than anything, man. They draw eyeballs. Same thing with Texas getting in because I don't think they deserve to be in either. When you're like 1-10 in quad one games, man, go play in the NIT. Just go play in the NIT. But it's North Carolina, man. You know, you can best bet if Clemson had the same record as North Carolina, they'd not be in the tournament right now. They'd be playing in the NIT. But it's also the same kind of benefit of the doubt. Clemson gets a lot of times in the football polls and stuff. Noah Samel, he pitched the inning last week. He's on a progression. You know, maybe pitch 2 innings this week. That they only plan for him to pitch 1 inning that day. Maybe Backus made it sound like maybe he can pitch 2 this week. It also made it sound like he can't. Again, he doesn't say a whole lot about injuries, man, and he's like a lot of other coaches, man. When he does, I just don't know how much stock you can put into it sometimes. You know, think about the way Dabo talks about how some guys, you know, he's day to day, but we don't see him for a month. To me, that's kind of a little bit the way Backus is. It's not something he likes to put out there. So, I'm a little bit more optimistic on Talon Bell being back in the next. It definitely doesn't sound like this week. Maybe the next couple of weeks, but if Gillen's behind him and has not even thrown a simulated game yet, which is what Backus said yesterday, man, I'm thinking I'm thinking another month maybe. I mean, I don't think I just don't know if soon is the way I would term it, but I didn't actually get to watch Noah throw the other day because I was out of town. We were on vacation at the beach, and when we got there, we didn't have any Wi-Fi for me to watch the baseball game. The Spectrum man had to come out there and fix it, and by the time he fixed it, they were already in the 4th inning, so I missed that. So I'll have to judge that on when he pitches next time. Don't think UNC should have been in, but they can be a problem and make a run the way they are playing. They it's kind of like any other game or sport, man. It's all about the matchup. You know, some teams they can present a matchup problem. That guard they got, man, he's really good. RJ Davis, I think's his name. He's outstanding. One of the bright spots is going to Charlotte. Past couple of days was I actually got to watch Duke, North Carolina play in person for the first time, man, and that thing it was kind of like the Louisville Clemson game. It looks like it's fixing to get ugly, and North Carolina makes a run and screwed themselves at the end with the lane violation and a bad foul. But yeah, depending on who they play, man, they could present a problem, especially if RJ Davis gets hot. Their biggest thing with North Carolina is they're terrible defensively. They're just not very good on the defensive end of the floor. Will motivated news outlets have some phone or GoPro clips from the spring scrimmage? No TV for those. You know what? That is a new football thing that has been released since we were here last week, since they've been on spring break. No television for the spring game this year. So people that are too far away to drive in for the spring game, that's going to suck for you guys. Dabo kind of said it the other night, if you want to see it, you got to come. It's a different way of going about doing it. Media will be allowed there. So I'm sure the TV crews will be there doing their thing the way they always do. Clemson will put out some clips and some highlights. Kind of curious to see if maybe they'll put a replay up on Clemson Plus or something. I kind of lean towards thinking not. It's an interesting way to go, man, especially as good of a broadcast as the Clemson spring game's been the past few years, because you put Dabo on the mic, man, it just makes it that much more entertaining. It's just so disappointing from that aspect. From what he said publicly, this decision wasn't made based on fears of tampering. And I kind of believe him, because he had a point about tampering is going to happen whether you play a spring game or not, and there's how much tampering you're going to get from a spring game. I think that's being a little over paranoid, but he made a point about how long they are and you can get them over much quicker with no television, and maybe next year implement a fan day to go along with it and those kind of things. I'm kind of curious to what they do with it next year. Maybe just stream it on Clemson Plus or something and try to generate their own revenue if the ACC even allows that kind of thing. But it does kind of suck for folks that live far away and it's too far of a drive to come in for a spring game. It definitely is. Yeah, they'll do a radio broadcast, no television. I mean, if you're old school or older, you might like listening radio broadcast, man. It just depends on the play-by-play guy. If you got a good play-by-play guy, you can watch it in your head. And I'm of the opinion that Don Munson has turned into a pretty solid play-by-play guy. Should have put the game on Clemson Plus. Yeah, I don't know all the details behind that. Maybe that's something the ACC wouldn't allow. I don't know. Maybe if it's going to be televised or streamed, it's got to be done through them, and that because they own the media rights. I don't know how all those things work. Kind of above my pay grade, to be quite honest. But again, I'll be kind of curious to see if maybe they go that route next year, because it's definitely a way to generate a little more revenue for your program. If nothing else, do a little bit of advertising. But yeah, it does kind of suck for people that live far away, man. And if you've been to the spring game the past 2 or 3 years, it's not, the attendance numbers are not what they were, when Clemson was winning at an elite level. And maybe part of this is trying to draw some more fans into town and drum up more business on that day and get those attendance numbers up, even though it's free. I mean, they're not making any money off of it from a ticket standpoint or from a parking standpoint. They do make money in the concessions on those days, and the local businesses, could benefit from the extra bump of people if that's indeed what happens. Orange in the end zone. That was Pete Yannity's go-to. Or he's the one. Being at all the games, I don't ever get to listen to Don on football broadcasts. I'm not even really sure what his signature is, but Orange in the end zone was started by Pete Yanity. I don't know if Don does that or not. I don't think he does he? Correct me if I'm wrong. Don Munson is one of the best play-by-play in the business. Yeah, I think Don Munson has turned into a pretty solid play-by-play guy. And I think he gets better every year. I thought his first year or two was a little rough, but man, he has really grown into that role, and he's really good. Yeah, every time Clemson scored, Pete Yanity kind of followed. Golly, drawing a blank. The legendary radio guy for Clemson. Can't believe I can't remember his name. I'm telling you, my memory's getting so bad. Told you my memory's getting bad. And those were some big shoes to fill, man, at the time. But yeah, that was his signature. Every time they'd score, Pete Yanity would say, "Orange in the end zone. Orange in the end zone." Jim Phillips. Can't believe I couldn't remember that. Getting old, man. Getting old. Vandervoort would kill me if he knew I forgot that, even for a minute. I want to appreciate everybody that tuned in here tonight. Back in our regular time slot after having to go on Tuesday last week. Myself And Ashby will be right back here Thursday night, 7 o'clock. All baseball, all the time, for another episode of Rounding the Bases. We'll talk Clemson's series win over Notre Dame, what happens with the midweek games against the Citadel. Look ahead to the big matchup against Wake Forest coming up this weekend. The Deacs, number 11 in the D1 baseball poll, man. That's a big one. And Wake's kind of had Clemson's number the last few years. Be a good one to go to. Want to thank our sponsor, A-Glass. 2 locations, one in Florence, one in Sumter. Take care of all your auto glass needs. They do replacement, repair. You can get yourself a free quote. Just visit the website, myaglass.com. Been in business a long time over there. A-Glass, for when you need a glass. Again, I want to thank everybody tuned in tonight. Stay up to date on all the happenings of the basketball tournament. Midweek baseball games coming up tomorrow and Wednesday. Baseball series against Wake Forest. Any other thing that might break. Recruiting, softball, we got you covered. ClemsonInsider.com. See y'all next time.